All right, everybody, we're going to get started tonight. Welcome to First Fill Spirits and Saratoga Whiskey Club's tasting number 135. We keep plugging right along with these tastings. We have quite the lineup tonight, 8 whiskeys. We will be bringing water. We'll bring water out as we go along because you do want to keep hydrated, especially with the heat we had today. But very excited to welcome Lorri and John from Raising Glasses. They came out today from the Boston area to be with us tonight. A lot of you don't know what Raising Glasses is. They're going to explain all that and walk you through this wonderful lineup of 3 scotches and 5 rums tonight. So lots of different things going on tonight. We do have a couple more people coming, running a little bit late, so just keep that in mind. Hopefully everybody online can hear. We should be good to go. But without further ado, welcome. Thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah,
and we can't wait to try these expressions. I haven't had any of them yet, so I'm very excited.
No, they're all terrible. Yeah, well, thanks for everybody for coming out. We really appreciate it. Looks like we got a full house here, and we got some people online too. Hello, everybody. So I'm John Shute. This is my wife, Lorri Kern. Raising Glasses is our company. We are importers and distributors of fine rum and, well, I guess you'll tell us whether they're fine or not. Fine rum and fine whiskey. We only do things that are that kind of meet our standards. Almost everything we do is single cask. Almost everything we do is cask strength. There's a few things we watered down just to have mercy on our people, but otherwise single casks are our specialty. So we are an independent bottler. You guys probably all know what independent bottlers are, but for those of you who don't, we don't make the stuff, we don't sell the stuff. We're the vultures in the middle that get great spirits from all over the world, bottle it under our own label, and then we ship it off to people like Charles and Holly who do the hard work of getting it to you guys. So we've been doing this for well, technically 3 years, but the first 2 years we're just getting the licensing together. We didn't sell a single bottle the first 2 years, so that's an interesting business model. We are based in Boston, Massachusetts. That is where we have our distribution license. We are partnering with other organizations and other distributors to get out to other states such as New York. So, what's the connection? How does a company from Boston end up knowing a company from Saratoga? Well, the answer is that we've known Holly for a really, really long time. She was a whiskey buyer for a store named Gordon's, and she was. It was not.
For a minute.
Right. And she was just so knowledgeable and so helpful and so nice that when she left and she came out here and she opened this beautiful store with Charles, and we said someday we're going to get our bottles in your store. So this is the day. So my biggest pet peeve for these kind of tastings is where somebody like me blathers on for half an hour. Well, in this case, it's going to be 15 minutes of setting up and then I'm blathering for half an hour, and you're all just dying, hoping to get a taste of whiskey before you end up like these guys right here. So why don't we go into it? So today's lineup, as Charles says, we have 8 tastings. They're about 1/3 of an ounce each, maybe a little more.
Yeah, these are more.
Yeah, we got Charles and Holly like to pour with a heavy hand.
They're like 0.6,
Right.
6.5. Somewhere around there.
Okay, so it would have been about 2 2/3 ounce of liquor, probably closer to 3. So maybe 5. Okay. So it's 5 ounces. That's about 2.5 drinks. So
And almost all of them are cask strength, but they're all over 50%.
yeah. So yeah, all of them are high proof. As Charles said, drink water liberally, and also don't be afraid to add water as well. I personally add water to just about every single one of these bottles, so there's no shame in that. Lorri never adds water to anything, so your results may vary. We also have a nice array of snacks as well. Please eat liberally. We want all of you to be able to get home safely tonight, so that you can buy more of our stuff. Okay, let's go into it. So the very first one Actually, the very first two, you might want to taste side by side, because they actually came from the same cask. So we bought a hogshead of Port Dundas 21-year single grain Scotch. Okay, so I'll be honest, I didn't actually know that much about single grain. I always thought it meant that it was made from a single grain, and that's actually not the case. Single means single distillery. Grain means it's from a mash bill of grains. Single malt is very much the same idea, all comes from one single distillery, but it's all malt, so it's all from barley. So when you see single grain, a lot of people think, oh, which grain is it? Okay, the answer is it's a lot of different grains. The predominant grain in Port Dundas is corn, and not only is it corn, it's American corn. So very unusual. I don't know why Port Dundas historically used a lot of American corn in their mash bills, but it's responsible for the very character of Port Dundas. And if you think of what's a whiskey that's made predominantly from corn, obviously it's bourbon. Yeah. So we like to say that for people who are bourbon fanatics who just will not touch any kind of Scotch, this is the one to try, because it's a good gateway into Scotch. And even if you are very experienced with Scotch, single grain can be a beautiful, beautiful spirit. It tends to be lighter, tends to be fruitier, tends to be more elegant than, let's say, a brawny single malt. The other nice thing about this bottle, other than the fact that it's 21 years, is that it's from Port Dundas, which is a dead distillery. So Port Dundas closed, stopped producing about 2009, and so that means that what you're drinking is among the very last Port Dundas that you'll ever see. They'll never make any more. Another thing that's interesting and somewhat uncommon about Port Dundas is that it's from the Lowlands region. So out of all the major regions in Scotch, Lowlands is probably the one that is the most rare or the most uncommon. Okay, so the first one is Innocence. So when we bought this hogshead of Port Dundas, we bottled half of it as is, so that's the Innocence, and then we took the other half and we messed with it. Okay. So the first one is the unadulterated version. It is the cask strength. It came out to be 57.0% ABV, and it's actually quite rare that we do a tasting that involves Innocence, because it's actually been sold out for quite a while. The only bottles that are still available for sale are in this store. Everywhere else is wiped out. We actually brought a few of the very last bottles that we had out of our own collection for those of you who might be interested in picking some of the very last bottles. So the characteristic of Innocence and most Port Dundas single grain is that you do get a kind of a lighter spirit. What's nice is that once you have that ABV, it really kind of multiplies the flavor. You're going to get a good grain characteristic, but the 21 years really mature it, soften it, round it out. Okay, its partner, which is the second one. Oh, by the way, we're going from lower left-hand corner across, and then we'll go to the top row. So its partner is what we call Opulence. So we took the other half and we bought a brand new Oloroso Sherry quarter cask. Now, the reason I keep emphasizing quarter cask is that I believe this is a quarter cask right here. So it's a smaller barrel, which means that the spirit will actually age more quickly. Why is it going to age more quickly if it's in a smaller barrel? Well, the answer is that if you compare it to, like, say, a larger barrel, the percentage of wood contact to liquid is much higher, because in a big barrel, you've got that middle where like nothing's really interacting with the wood. So if you shrink it down, you're going to have a lot of wood contact, a lot of wood interaction. Also, the fact that it was brand new meant that it was going to age very quickly as well. So if you hold them up closely to each other, you'll see that in just 6 months, it took on a completely different color, and you'll recognize the flavor right away. So for those of you who are really into dark, heavy sherry, this is the bottle for you. So Oloroso Sherry, the characteristics that you typically see, that you also see in this dram, you get a lot of raisins, you get a lot of figs, you get kind of a chewiness to the texture. So if you go back and forth, I'll be interested to see which one of these you like. It's pretty much a 50-50 split between those who like the standard bourbon cask versus those who like the hair cask. So the artwork on these bottles was done by an artist named Mira Shu. Now, my name's John Shu, her name's Mira Shu. We're not related. It's like if you're from Taiwan, Shu is like Smith. Okay, it's not my daughter. If the shoe fits, have them do the artwork on the bottle. So she was 15 at the time. I saw her mom posted her artwork on Facebook, and I said, that should be on a whiskey bottle. So we commissioned her to do the artwork for the two bottles. Okay, now that you've had something to drink, let's go into the more boring details. So what our origin story is. So I would love to say that we were bitten by a radioactive alcoholic spider, and that's how we became alcohol distributors, but that's definitely not the case. We, as just as consumers, like you folks, we really first we got into bourbon, and then we got into Scotch, and then we went back to bourbon, and then we went back to Scotch, and then we got into rum. And we decided it would be really cool to have a barrel of our own. So we went to New Riff Distillery. Obviously, there's some bottles in New Riff here, and they were very aggressive in the beginning about letting consumers buy their own barrels. So across 2 trips to New Riff, we bought 2 different barrels. The funny thing is, when we bought the barrels, we didn't realize they didn't have legal distribution in Massachusetts. So they said, when are you coming to pick this up?
Hey, we did that too. As well.
You did a road trip?
All the way.
Yeah, we drove all the way back up to Boston, and it was quite the ride. We found out after we had made this plan is that it's actually illegal to transfer that much alcohol.
On YouTube. So.
Yeah, well, that was a long time
That was
ago.
a friend of yours.
Yeah.
Friend of mine.
Statute of limitations on that, yeah, friends past. So that went really well, and then we went up to a local rum distillery called Privateer. Oh, you have Privateer, okay, great. And we bought 2 casks there as consumers as well. And those did so well that we thought someday maybe we can do this professionally. So a lot of people ask us, so what is your company image? What is your ethos as an independent bottler? And we thought about this and we said, well, the thing that makes us happier than almost anything is like having people over and we all just sharing whiskey and sharing rum and sharing drams, and we're just introducing new spirits to each other. So we thought that this is kind of the feeling that we want our company to have. These are bottles that we like, and we want other people to have them. And we just want to do it professionally. And well, we do want you to pay for it this time. But other than that, we want to be the company that shares whiskey just like we with your friends who charge you lots of money. Okay, so what are we tasting in terms of the spirit map? I'm going to rip through this because you guys obviously know a lot of this. So spirits are categorized by what is the stuff made from. So it's either grain, sugarcane, fruit, or neutral grain spirit. So if it's grain, it's whiskey. If it's sugarcane, it's rum. If it's fruit, it's brandy. And if it's neutral grain spirit, it's for people who don't want anything with flavor, like vodka. There's gin, of course. Gin is basically neutral grain spirit with juniper and other botanicals added to it. So what we'll be tasting today specifically are single malt Scotch, which is under the grain category, whiskey category. Single malt Scotch made from barley. Single grain Scotch, which you're tasting now, which is made from a mixture of different things. Like I said, predominantly American corn, sometimes wheat, sometimes rye. And a little bit of barley as well. So for sugarcane, where you get rum, generally you're looking at 2 different ingredients. Either they're crushing the sugarcane and you have the juice, and you can make rum directly from the juice that you just pressed. And that style of rum is generally called agricole, depending on which country it's coming from. The flavor of agricole rum or agricole style rum tends to be much funkier than your standard rum. Almost all rum is made from molasses. So that's the byproduct of making sugar, where you take the sugarcane juice, you boil it down, you extract the crystals, and the black goo that's left over is molasses. So all of the rums that you'll be tasting today are from the molasses category.
John,
That makes sense?
The Trinidad one is, it's not an agricole?
No, it is not an agricole. That is, I believe. There may be some weird exceptions, but I think most Trinidad is molasses.
Mhm.
Can you get it? Maple syrup.
John, you entranced me with your story and then jumped from grain to the rum. May I ask a question about the single grain? You said, or they said it was American corn. Does that really mean corn that was grown in the United States? Or since all corn originally came from the Americas, is it just saying, hey, it's this weird grain that they call maize, but we call corn?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. As far as I know, just researching when we were buying the Port Dundas cask, they very heavily emphasized the fact that they used American corn. But you are correct. I believe almost all corn comes from America. Yeah. Latin America goes it as well.
Charles, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was, is it American corn, or is it corn from somewhere else in the Americas? If they actually specify that. It's, kind of a unique question, but, I do have a question though about Port Dundas though. This was the first thing that we had in our shop, along with a few other rums. Was there a reason for that? I mean, I'm just curious about your entry to market, and obviously it's challenging sometimes to get barrels from Scotland,
Yes.
especially aged barrels from Scotland. Can you just explain that a little bit, just about like how you were able to acquire those?
Yeah.
Port Dundas, and just what that process looks like, because I know it's not an easy process.
Yeah, doing independently bottled scotch is actually torture. It's complete torture. So usually the path goes, you try to establish some credibility, and then you start talking to cask brokers who are, reflecting casks and reselling to independent bottlers like us. Because we had done the 2 new riffs and we had done the 2 privateers, we had a little more credibility than some guy off the street is like, hey, I'd like to have my own barrel of scotch. That never works. So from there, they'll give you a list, and then from that list, if you're just in it to make money, you'll say, I'll take these casks, and then the plan is to just flip them later after they've accrued in value. But in our case, we wanted to bottle it right away. So we said, well, which ones do you have available samples for? And every broker goes, because in many cases, they don't own these barrels. So they have to find the owners of the barrels and get samples from them. So that whittles a list of about from, typically 100 to 200 selections down to about 50. And when we saw the Port Dundas on the list, we immediately knew we had a shot at doing something that would sell very well, because it wasn't, there's not a whole lot of competition for Port Dundas. Also, the category single grain was something that we knew. A lot of people know single malt, but not everybody knows single grain. So we thought that had a good chance of selling. And also the fact that it was 21 year. Single grain, you can super age single grain without making it too oaky. There's some 40, 50-year-old single grains, which, taste great. They're not overly woody at all. So they sent us 2 Port Dundas samples. The first one we tasted, I would not have been surprised if they had accidentally sent us water. There was like no flavor to it whatsoever. The other sample, which was its sister cask, like you can tell because they have the cask numbers, it was just one apart. The other one is the one you're drinking today. And we were knocked out immediately. I said, this is the one we want. So we very much decided not to go for a very common distillery or a very common format like single malt. Because as a new company, you have to do something to get people's attention. So that and the fact that it was a dead distillery as well. Because once people, nothing makes whiskey taste better than finding out you're not going to be able to get it anymore.
How were you able to sample from the Oloroso cask during its finishing to know when was the right time to bottle it?
Yeah, that's also a very painful point as well. It was a real risk. Because number one, when they sell you a cask of sherry, they often don't tell you what kind of sherry was in it, or what's the provenance of the wood or anything like that. You're literally just picking off a list and praying that it's good. In this case, we knew it was the first fill, so we knew that it was going to put heavy sherry influence right away, which is something we wanted because we wanted something to sell. So I think we got very, very lucky with that. The process of getting them to pull a sample out of your aging barrel and send it to you is almost as painful as getting the original sample when you're buying the barrel. So it's about in this case, it's about a 2-month lag period. So when we tasted it, we said, okay, you need to pull it now, because if this goes any longer, it can get over-sherried. And sometimes when you over-sherry a Scotch or whiskey, it actually starts turning a little bitter as well. Yeah, I think we were lucky to be able to pull it at the right time. But what we're going to be doing in the future when it comes to, we're pulling some Westland casks, so American single malt, we're bringing in some rum, we're bringing in some Irish single grain as well. We have a bottling facility and warehouse in New Hampshire. So in that case, we can just drive up and be able to taste it every week if we really want to. So that'll be a lot less nerve-wracking than what we did with this work on this. Yeah, we had a question over here. Oh, you did? Okay.
I think you answered it, sorry.
Okay, oh, good. Okay, let's move to the third tasting. So this is a single malt. So this is Linkwood. Many of you have probably had Linkwood. We've always loved Linkwood. We think it's very underrated as a spirit. One of the reasons it's underrated is because you don't see a whole lot of it bottled by Linkwood. Almost all of it is bottled by independent bottlers such as us. So this particular, when we got this sample, the second we nosed it, we fell in love with it because it's just so beautifully floral. You can almost take a perfume from it. It just smells so good. And I think the reason for it is that it's got kind of an unusual provenance in terms of the wood. So it spent all 9 years in an Oloroso sherry bottle. Yeah, so a barrel like that size generally gets you about 200, 250 bottles, obviously less if you're losing a lot of annual share over the years. Oloroso sherry butt gets you about 500, 550 if you're lucky. So it's a much bigger investment to be able to find something like that. But if you notice the color on it, it's just barely like a light honey, light straw color. And you compare it to the Opulence right before it, you're like, how can the Opulence be that dark in 6 months? But this Linkwood in 9 years still be so light? Well, the answer is our Oloroso quarter cask for the Opulence was the first one. This, but who knows how many times it's been used. Okay. So
Depleted. What's your guess?
I would guess at least third, maybe even fourth. Really? Yeah. So some people would be like, okay, well then why even bother? Well, the thing is, if you actually smell it, you can taste it. There's something special about aging something for 9 years in a very soft refill barrel. Now, if it had been a first fill, that thing would probably be black and it would probably be terrible. But that sort of gentle aging, that gentle maturation in the Oloroso sherry butt, I think makes something very, very special.
Very good.
Yeah.
And it's not super sherry saturated.
Yeah, it's not a sherry bomb at all. It's more like kind of sherry integration into the spirit.
And this one isn't in the store yet, but it's available for pre-order tonight.
Yeah, Holly was gonna mention something about that.
Yeah, just for reference, these bottles over here, you can have today.
Yeah.
These bottles, you can pre-order and it should be here probably in about 2 months or so.
Or less.
Yeah, so I know it's a little confusing, but I think I simplified it a little bit. So the first, these Port Dundas and these first 3 rums, they're kind of mixed into the tasting. Those you can all leave with today if you want them. The rest of them, it's a gift to your future self. You buy it today and then we call you when New York State finally registers it, because it takes about 2 months, unfortunately, for New York State to register new products. And then we'll call you and you will have essentially a free bottle. Because you will have forgotten that you bought them. So you can purchase those, but you cannot leave with them. I think it's a good deal.
Finding a bottle of whiskey in your pants after it comes out of the laundry.
That when someone calls and says, hey, come pick up your bottle, and you're like, great.
Yeah.
Like when I go to Ireland and I have to ship it to home and things all that show up, ooh, I have free.
So just something to keep in mind as you're navigating through the tasting net, and I can answer any questions that you have too.
Just give the prices for the Port
Sure.
Dundas and the Linkwood.
So Port Dundas, if you could look up Linkwood, it's in Square, just right on there.
Should be fine.
Port Dundas is, the Innocence is $99.99. And the Opulence, which is the sherry, is $110.99. And the Linkwood,
110.
$110.99. And then the rums, just so you know, will kind of hover between this kind of like $50 to $65 range, but they're all in this, so.
This is 9 years aged.
9 years, yeah, 9 years, all Oloroso sherry, but. Regional sherry, but obviously.
What we'll do as well, when the tasting is over and all that, I'm gonna send an email out to everybody who was here. With all of the information too. So you can always pre-order through the email too. But there are gonna be some bottles available tonight if you did want to walk out.
Oh, and online, they have to email us for the pre-sale.
Right.
And this is like the other two bottles, this is also cast strength, 60.6%.
Mhm. Okay, John, I get the impression that you are buying the aged casks. You're not buying casks and doing any aging yourself.
Yes, so actually with this Linkwood, because like we mentioned, it's a lot of bottles, you're looking at over 500 bottles. What we've done with the Linkwood is we bottled a third of it. So this is volume 1, which you're tasting now. We took another third and we put it in the same quarter cask that we did the Opulence in. So we actually have a bonus tasting later, if you'd like to taste that. It's kind of cool to taste things side by side, like how does this evolve over time. And we took the other third and we put that in a first fill Madeira cask. So we also have a sample of that as well. So volume 1, 2, and 3.
That's not
yeah,
gonna
we
travel
do like to
through
do those kind of
the Zoom
maturations.
well.
Sorry, what was the question?
I said those samples behind John are not gonna travel through the Zoom too
No,
well.
they're not. You're just gonna have to
Listen to you.
pretend to taste them.
Yeah, we have not mastered the art of alcohol over IP.
That'll be lucrative.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll just alert you through the internet, literally through the internet. So Linkwood is owned by Diageo. They rarely bottle it on its own. It's supposedly a component of Johnny Walker. But I think by itself, way better than Johnny Walker.
Oh, yeah.
So like we said, the nose on it is something that we loved. It has a very classic Speyside characteristics of fruit and honey and straw. But again, what I think makes this particular bottle very special is the long maturation and a very soft refill cherry flavor. Again, we have the artwork done by Mira Shu. The character that we put in there, I specifically said, and I hope nobody from Nintendo sees this. So like, because it's Linkwood, and there's a character Link from the Zelda series. Yeah, exactly. Okay, very good.
And our YouTube.
It's like, can you make Link female and then kind of have her looking out on the mountains and stuff? And she was like, sure, okay. So we submitted it to the TTB here in the US, and the TTB was like, good, no problem. And then they submitted it to the Scotch Whiskey Association, and they said, no way. Like, you gotta be kidding. You're Scotland. If anyone's gonna reject it, it's gonna be us Americans. So yeah, so it led to a huge battle. This was the first version that we put up. And we were saying, what they said is like, she's young. And little Scottish kids in a liquor store and I go, oh, I want that. Because that's what Scottish kids do. They go through liquor stores and they buy bottles, right? So they said like, no, she's too young, it's gonna appeal to children, not allowed. So then we did version 3 and we made her older and made her a little taller, and they still said no. And then we finally said, how about we don't even show her face? And they were like, okay, all right, that's it. I don't know who's in charge of that stuff, but all I can say is I'm really glad they didn't see the very first version where she looked like that. Yeah, they probably would have just banned us. That feels like a fail. They would have banned us forever.
You're never allowed to buy a Scotch bottle.
Lifetime ban. I hope the Scotch Whiskey Association isn't watching this presentation either. We have a long list of people that I hope never see this presentation. Okay, so like I said, volume 1 is as it came 9 years from the Oloroso Sherry, but its name is Emergence. So we had to come up with some other names for the other one. So volume 2, Oloroso Quarter Cask. I asked friends, what should we call the next one? They said, well, why don't you call it Insolence? Okay, well, what should we call the third one? And they said, how about Flatulence? I said, I'm not gonna ask you guys for whiskey names anymore.
You've got a great friend.
Yeah. Yeah, so you never let your friends be your marketing department. Grow very quickly. So we ended up calling the second one Ascendance. We're gonna call the third one Eminence. And again, if you would like to taste this progression of the 3, we do have the other 2 available as a bonus taste. Okay, how are we doing? Good. Ready for some rum? Yeah. All right, rum. Okay, well, the thing about rum is that it's hard to sell. Why is rum hard to sell? It's because most people think it sucks. Okay, why do people think rum sucks? Big one is rum is too sweet. People also say, yeah, it's only for cocktails, and it's bad cocktails when you're like in a beach or a swim up pool. Or rum all tastes the same, or there's no rules in rum, I don't know what I'm drinking. And the other one is like politically, rum is not cool because you have the tiki bars where you're drinking mugs out of things that were actually gods to other people. That's not so cool. And if you paid attention during history class in high school, you know about the triangle trade where slaves were part of the rum triangle. So so our responses to these questions are, well, is it too sweet? But we're gonna tell you why rum kicks ass, because it's actually not by nature sweet. Yes, it comes from sugarcane, but in the process of distillation, we're just basically boiling stuff in the vapor that comes up. Sugar is a very big, heavy molecule. Only tiny trace amounts of sugar actually make it up into the vapor that gets condensed and makes your rum spirit. So if a rum is too sweet, it means that somebody's just thrown in a bunch of sugar. Or dosage, yeah. I think you know the plantation story if you're saying dosage. So yeah, so cheap rum, they often throw in tons of color, they often throw in tons of sugar or other flavoring elements. There is a brand which I won't mention that's actually being sued as a class action lawsuit, saying that this is not even rum. You're just taking spirit, you're throwing in color, you're throwing in flavoring, and you're calling it rum.
Is that like Fireball?
It's not worse than Fireball. It's actually worse than Fireball. Because this company is charging about $60 to $100 a bottle for something that may not even technically be wrong.
You don't want to say.
But very fine. If I say the
Yeah.
country, you'll get it now. Yeah. But yeah, so really great rum has no sugar added to it, or just tiny trace amounts. The problem is rum as a category, almost all the big names that you know fall under that umbrella of heavily flavored, heavily sugared. And there's very few bottles that say under $40 that aren't really heavily doctored. So it's hard to get people into rum when all the rum that they're used to tasting is crap. Yeah, exactly. It's like tequila. Sorry. Yeah, tequila has the same problem as well. So the other one is it's for crappy beach cocktails. Actually, we started off as in cocktails. We weren't even really doing straight spirits. We first got into alcohol just as cocktails. Rum is incredibly flexible spirit when it comes to cocktails. Yes, you can do.
For what it's worth, Charles, you're muted, okay.
So if you have if you have something like an old fashioned, swap out the whiskey for rum, you're gonna get an incredible old fashioned. If you like Negronis, take out the gin, put it in rum, you want to put something called a Kingston. It's like a fantastic cocktail. So yeah, there's a lot of bartenders who have made their name simply by taking out the original spirit, throwing in rum, making something that looks brand new, but yeah, is really just a spin on something. And rum is a great spirit for it. Rum all tastes the same. Well, one thing we hope to convince you by the end of today is that it's the most diverse spirit in the world. I'm not going to call it the most diverse alcohol in the world because I think that would probably be beer. Almost every country makes some kind of beer. Almost every country makes their version of Bud Light, which tastes great while you're there, and you come home and you drink it, and you're like, wow, this is not so great. But the reason that rum is made in so many countries is because molasses travels very well. It's by its very nature, it's antibacterial. So even if you're in a country that doesn't grow sugarcane, you can easily get really good molasses and make rum from it. So that's why you see rum all over the world. So rum has no rules. Yeah, there actually are rules, but the rules are not always respected globally. We're very lucky with bourbon. France is very lucky with cognac. Those GIs or AOCs or DOCs are recognized across the world. Rum has not had that benefit. So Jamaican rum is a good example. Jamaica has very strict rules about what can be called Jamaican rum. But once you take it out of Jamaica, we could literally buy rum from Haiti and bring it to America and call it Jamaican rum because the US is not respecting the Jamaican GI for rum. So it's kind of a tragedy. But if you begin to learn which countries have good rules and you buy rum that was actually made in that country, there are rules, and it's very high quality spirit. So the tiki and the slave trade and all that stuff, I don't have a good answer for that. That's not as bad.
There is an answer. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the rum producers coming out are being more. A lot of the countries, the islands, et cetera, are taking control over that system and becoming part of their own production, their own story. So it is going away from the colonialist approach, although that still exists, certainly. But more and more you're seeing the native country going in.
Well, no, Colombia is a good example.
Individuals or et cetera that were previously on the other side of the exploitation.
Very good example of that.
Yeah, almost every major rum producing country in the Caribbean has done a very good job of reclaiming the spirit as their own. There are some vestiges of the colonial tradition which are unfortunate. I'll actually discuss a little bit of that later. But you are right that there's definitely a movement to take it away from the this is a British style, this is a Spanish style. Also the tiki is undergoing its own kind of cultural revolution as well. They're trying to take it away from the carved idols that were modeled off of actual religious artifacts, and they're trying to make things that are more modern and still fun, but not as appropriation heavy as a traditional tiki. Okay, so rum 101. As we said, it's made from sugar cane. It can be made from the pure pressed cane juice, and that's the agricultural style. Sometimes you can take that juice and boil it down into syrup. It makes it a little more stable, and you can make rum from cane syrup. Not as common. St. Nicholas Abbey from Barbados is one of the more famous ones who do that. But the vast majority of rum is made from that molasses byproduct. And the molasses that you get from the Caribbean is often better suited for rum than the molasses that you get from most American sugar producers. And the explanation that I've heard, I don't know if this is completely accurate, but the more heavily industrialized nations have worked their process so that so much sugar is taken out of the molasses that the molasses left is not very good for rum. And if you have an actual less efficient method for making molasses, for extracting sugar, the molasses that you're left with is pretty damn good. And that's what you really want to make rum from.
Can you, there was a question in the chat, can you quickly define molasses again, like the technical definition of molasses?
Sure, yeah, that's pretty simple. So you press the sugar cane, you get the juice, you boil it down, you let it evaporate, you get sugar crystals, you pull out the sugar crystals, what's left is the molasses.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so factors that make that affect the actual flavor of rum, because it's nice to know all these facts, but it's kind of useless unless you are able to use this information to predict which kind of rums you're going to like or what you're not. So first is the way it's being fermented. Rum, many rum producers rely heavily on the local yeast, literally the yeast that's in the air. That not only gives you more diversity, but also gives you a sense of terroir. Because you could take the same still, the same molasses, do it in Georgia, do it in Barbados, you're going to end up with something different. Okay. Obviously, they're still using a lot of commercial yeast, because if you're just relying on the atmosphere, it's going to take you a really long time to make your rum. So it's usually a mix of wild yeast and commercial yeast. Then you have what's called dunder. So if you're familiar with backset in making whiskey, it's the stuff that's left over after you're done doing a pot still run. And so you take this backset and you throw it into the next batch, and it's kind of like a starter, kind of like a sourdough or yogurt. It accelerates the process and intensifies the fermentation cycle for the next batch of liquor that you're making. So dunder is used pretty heavily, especially in Jamaican rum, and it tends to give you, I would say, a more fruity, almost overripe fruit notes to it. Some people, when you take it really far, it gets into funk. And then some people love the funk, some people hate the funk. It's kind of like peat. Some people love the peat, some people can't stand the peat. So dunder is a big factor for that. And then you get into this thing called muck, which sounds disgusting. And it is. Because in that case, they're taking the dunder and they're literally throwing it into a pit. And they're throwing other stuff into it. And the other stuff is supposed to be, it's biological material, like, fruits and herbs and that kind of stuff. And then they just let that stuff rot. They just let it rot over time. Legendarily speaking, supposedly some bats would fly in there and die, and they'd become part of the muck, or they would, after they're done butchering goats, they take the head and they throw that into the muck. No one has been able to document that that's actually true, but no one has been able to document that it's not true either. So muck is an even more extreme use of dunder. And again, Jamaica is probably the country that's most well known for that, and that's why their rums tend to be very heavily flavored. You get a lot of overripe fruit, and you get a lot of funk from Jamaica. The length of fermentation also matters a lot. It's just true of just about every spirit. But with rum, the longer you let that sugar cane ferment, the more esters you're going to get. So esters are the chemical compound that give you the sensation of very ripe fruit.
And fermentation length is typically how long with rum?
My impression is that it generally runs a few days to, I think 2 weeks is considered very long.
Okay.
So somewhere in that range. Yeah. But there are some
because of the wild yeast as well.
Yeah, I think the concentration of the wild yeast is a factor. I think just letting it run longer time. There's definitely a movement towards higher and higher ester rums, so they're letting them ferment longer and longer. I kind of call it the octomorph phenomenon. It's like, well, how peaty can we make this? And they're like, how many esters can we pump right into this? We do have a bonus tasting for one of the highest ester rums ever released here that actually Holly helped us get. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, you also have the distillation process. As you probably know, basically two types of stills. You have the column still, which is continuous. It generates a lot of alcohol very quickly because it's continuous. You don't have to do all these cycles of emptying it and cleaning it and running another one. But in terms of flavor, column style rums are going to be lighter, more fragrant, more elegant, whereas the pot stills are going to be more dense, more heavy, more intense. The double retort pot still is legendary in rum culture. You'll see that in Barbados and Jamaica quite a bit. And it basically means you're running through, it's basically a bunch of stills all stuck together. People who actually know double retort pot stills will kill me for saying that, but that's the general principle. So you can basically get double distilled or even triple distilled spirit in a single run. Okay, so rum is typically double distilled. Very rarely you'll see a triple distilled rum, but it's almost always double distilled. There is a type of rum distillation technique called queen share. This was pretty much had been lost to history until Privateer brought it back about 4 years ago. So if you're looking at your cuts, so this is a run through a pot still. You have your heads, which is just a lot of ethanol, a lot of poisonous stuff that will literally kill you. So they generally throw that stuff away. The hearts is the middle stuff, so that's the good stuff that that tastes good and won't kill you. And then you have the tails, which are usually just so many heavy molecules left in there. It's just too intense to drink. But what Queen Share does is they say, let's take very end of the heart's cut. All right, the richest spirit. And we're going to take this little slice, throw it into a pot, do this several times until you've got enough to redistill it. And so what you end up with is just a really gorgeous, very potent, incredibly flavorful rum that is made from this slice. Just from listening to the process, you can see that it's going to be expensive because they had to work really hard to make it. So
John?
Yes.
John, do you think that they'll have to change it from the queen share to the king share now?
I think we'll be able to hold on to the queen share.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Not really following up. From your picture, as you show, it's the end of the hearts picking up some more of the tails.
Yeah.
You
To be honest,
wouldn't want the heart of the hearts. You wouldn't want the smoothest because you're distilling it more times. Is that what you said? That's why you want some more tails in it?
yeah.
What was the question?
So the question is, like in this diagram, like this little slice that I took is taking a little bit of the tails out. To be honest, they're probably taking almost none of the tails. If I drew it exactly across this line, you wouldn't be able to tell where the heart started and the tails, the hearts ended and the tails started. So I just shifted a little bit just to make it look better. And I was hoping that nobody would catch me on that. So you, yeah.
Don't worry, no one saw it.
Can you take like number 11? Or,
Yeah, I
like,
think
would
that's
that
the
be the heart part, like the queen share? Would that be? Why would you want it so late in the heart run?
Because you're looking to get the most intense.
So it gets more intense as you go along.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to be honest, the lines, the division between lines becoming hearts and hearts becoming tails is very blurry. So,
The more you drink, the more blurry.
that is true. But we have a queen share that's aging in one of the new riff barrels that we drove up from Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
So we hope to have that by the end of the year.
Who's that picture from?
Privateer.
Oh, it is private.
Privateer, yeah. Okay, and finally, the last step is aging. I know you're dying to get into the rum. We're almost there. So aging, rum is one of the few spirits that people drink unaged and are very enthusiastic about it. Tequila and mezcal, obviously the other one. Typically, when you're doing the agricole type spirit, the one made straight from the sugarcane juice, the really hardcore agricole people, that's what they want. They want it completely unaged. Sometimes they'll take that and they'll age it in a steel tank. First time I heard that, I was like, aging in a steel tank, does that even do anything? Well, at least in terms of rum, it can actually do quite a bit. Clement, they have a product that's aged in a steel tank just for a few months. And I assume there's a reason for doing it. It's an excellent product. But most rum goes into wood. Most of the wood is ex-bourbon. As you guys know, why ex-bourbon? Because you can only use a bourbon barrel once. Someone's got to do something with that wood. So that's why Scotland's really happy. Well, a lot of the rum producers are really happy as well. So typically you'll see it aged in ex-bourbon. Sometimes they'll use it many, many, many times. Wood characteristic for rum is not as prized as it is for bourbon. So they don't have a problem reusing the same barrel many times. In terms of new oak, occasionally you'll see it done in new oak. You also see the same finishing casks that you typically see for whiskey. So your port, sherry, Madeira. One phenomenon that is kind of endemic to rum or unique to rum is whether it's aged in a tropical climate or a continental climate. The biggest cask broker in the world is E&A Shear, and they're based out of Amsterdam. They also have warehouses in Liverpool. If you ever see a rum and they say it's been aged, say 10 years tropical and then 2 years continental, I almost guarantee you it's an E&A Shear product, because that's what they do. They'll buy barrels from around the world. They'll collect them in their Liverpool warehouse or their Amsterdam warehouse, and for a number of years in continental, and then they'll sell it to to an independent bottler like us. So what's the difference? Well, if you think of tropical climates, well, it's hotter, so you're going to get more intense aging there. A continental climate like Amsterdam or Liverpool in the UK, it's going to be much softer aging. So softer aging is not necessarily bad, because if you tropically age something for too long, it's like leaving bourbon in a Kentucky barrel for way too long. It just gets so oaky, it's not even flavorful anymore. So the cool thing about a lot of these barrels is that you get a mixture. You get some like heavy aging up front, and then you get some nice years of soft aging after it. And it's fun to taste one that's been all tropically aged, one that's all continentally aged, and then one that's been inhabited. Okay, and the final factor in rum comes to blending. So with blending, typically in the whiskey world, blending is considered, the redheaded stepchild. Like, no, we all want single cask. In rum, the blending tradition is very, very respected, because not only will they blend multiple barrels together, multiple distilleries together, they'll often blend multiple countries together. And you rarely see that in whiskey. There's a few world whiskey brands out there that advertise that, but the Navy blend or Navy rum that the British would give to their Navy sailors, that's very famous because they grabbed Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, they put it all together, and it's a style that's very popular. Okay, so classifications. So how do you classify rum? Its very diversity makes it almost impossible to classify. So typically, if you go into a store, they'll start talking about, okay, well, we got our white rum, we have our gold rum, and then we have our dark rum. The problem is so many times they are adding color, so the color may not even tell you anything about it. And in many cases, they're taking color away. So Bacardi Superior, probably the most famous rum bottle out there. It's completely clear. Bacardi is made in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, by law, has to be aged, I think it has to be aged 2 years. Might be 1 year, I think it has to be aged 2 years. It's going to have color in it. They run it through charcoal to take all the color out. Boom, you've got white rum. Okay, but it's been aged. There's even a bottler, Hamilton, kind of the original independent bottler in America. Yeah, Ed Hamilton. He has a release where there's there's a colored version and there's a clear version, and he's very open because it's actually the same thing. It's just sometimes people want to see color in it, and so he'll sell it both ways.
Which one is it, Peter?
I believe I want to say it's Jamaican.
You're making pasta.
Yeah, I think I'd have to check on that. But so the other way you can do it is the colonial classification. Okay, the problem with the colonial classification is that you're literally naming it after the countries that oppressed the countries that were making the rum. The nice thing though is that it's a pretty good predictor of what the rum is going to taste like. So you have British rum, you're talking about Jamaican, Guyana, Barbados, and Trinidad. These are your more intense, more dense style rums. You also have your French rums, which are the more the agricole style, the cane juice rums, the funkier rums. Or you have the Spanish rums, you're mostly talking Cuba and Puerto Rico. Those tend to be lighter and more graceful type spirits. And then you have other classifications, the Gargano seal classification or the Martin Cape classification, where they get heavy into, was it done in a pot? Was it done in a column? Was it molasses? Was it cane juice? And there's so many factors involved that unless you're a nerd, that system's not going to be particularly helpful to you if you're just a beginner. Yes.
But one thing that's conspicuously missing to me on that list, especially the Florida one, is Haiti, which I would think would go into the French agricole.
Haiti? Yes, yeah, that's considered French style.
I think so, that's that.
Yeah. The Haiti makes a type called Clarin, which is, if you're super rum nerd, you're really into Clarin. A lot of people can't stand it. It's not officially an agricole though, because it's not one of the agricole countries, but for all intents and purposes, in terms of flavor, it's an agricole.
So made from the cane sugars, juice.
Yes, from the freshly pressed juice.
Venezuela is not on that list. Which style? Who owned it last?
Venezuela is interesting. We have a Venezuelan coming up. I believe it's considered Spanish.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, flavor wise, well, at least our bottle and a lot of the bottles coming out these days, it doesn't really follow that kind of Puerto Rican Bacardi on cue type style. Right, Panama is more close to the classic Spanish style. Okay, so what we're going to introduce to you now is what we're calling the folklore single cask rum series. Our goal with this series is to, first of all, prove that rum is the most diverse spirit. We work really hard to try to pull rums from all across the world. If you're new to rum, we want you to have a good introduction to rum. We want to convert whiskey drinkers to rum drinkers, which is why we fooled you by putting all the whiskey up in front. You're like, well, I'm here for the whiskey, so we want you to come for the whiskey and leave with the rum. But if you are a veteran rum drinker, we want you to trust us as a brand. We work very hard to curate really excellent barrels. We typically, out of everything that's offered to us, we typically pick 1 out of 10 barrels that are offered to us. And we also introduce it at a really, really good price. So if you want to take a chance on rum, you'll see the format of our bottles is $375, basically a half bottle. So you don't have to spend $100 to get a rum of $100 quality. So we wanted people to give rum a chance.
So is that the only size you do sell? Or do you not sell?
Rum is we only do it in 375s. It ends up costing us more because we have to buy double the number of bottles to sell the same amount of juice. But in terms of just getting people to try premium rum, it's been phenomenally successful. Yeah.
Market intro.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, people have gone to the point like, why aren't more people doing bourbon now?
Yeah.
So with the single cask rum line, we wanted to honor the countries of origin. So if you look at the artwork on all of these bottles, we commission our own artwork to feature a mythological character from each country. And in addition to that, we donate 5% of our profits from each bottle to a charity from that country as well. Okay, part of that's because we want to be nice people. Part of it is also an apology, because there's definitely a movement in rum to have the rum completely produced in a country of origin. Foursquare, Richard Seal, Barbados is especially cares about this, because they want the jobs to stay in the country that did the work to make the rum. So if you're just taking the rum out of that country and you're having somebody else age it, you're having somebody else bottle it, all that money's going to other countries, and you end up kind of in a situation with coffee, because coffee coffee producing countries get very little of it. It's the people who do all the processing and the roasting and all of that. They make the lion's share of the profit. So we are not at the point yet where we can just fly around the world and have people throw barrels at us. So yeah, so we definitely are taking a lot of rum and we are bottling it in New Hampshire. But our end goal is to hopefully someday be able to do it properly in the countries of origin. But until then, we'll do 5% of the profits. Those countries. Okay, let's get into the first tasting. So this is from Thailand. This is called Kinnaree. And the way this came around is my wife and I were visiting Thailand and we went to a fortune telling. So the fortune teller is like, was she reading our palms or just looking at us or?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago.
So the fortune teller looks at Lorri and says, you know, outside, you are a woman, but inside, you are like a man. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know. Like, that's
She's not
weird.
long.
That's weird. It's kind of hot. I think. I don't know. So then I sit down and she goes, you know what? Outside, you are like man, but inside, woman. Like, that's not hot. But so how does this translate into these rums? So we got all these samples from Thailand, and there was one rum that we thought was just beautiful. Yeah, it just opened beautifully, had lots of fruit characteristics. It had like a good strong rum molasses backbone to it. But the finish was a little soft. Right? I thought, oh, well, this seems kind of like a female type cask. And then we got another cask, and it was a little rough in the beginning, but it had a really strong finish, so a very heavy oak backbone to it. So well, this one's the male cask. So we thought, well, we like the first one, the Kinnaree better, so we're just gonna buy that one. But then we had a friend who was looking at it like, and then he mixed the two of them together. And he's like, you need to buy both of these because when you put them together, it's perfect. I'm like, okay, great, thanks a lot. So we ended up buying both casks. But if you only had to choose one, this is the one that we prefer. So this is the Kinnaree. This is just the Kinnaree.
You sell the blended versions?
We do.
We do.
First fill only does single casks though.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So what is the Kinnaree or the Kinnara? So in Thailand and a lot of these countries, there's a legend of the Kinnaree. They're half human, half bird. And so if you're looking at the artwork, that's why they've kind of got feathers and stuff. So the reason we really like the Thailand is that it definitely has depth. It's definitely bold, but it's very accessible. So for people who, are gonna just hate an agricole rum or something that's really funky, I think they're gonna like this. Thailand makes, frankly, they make a lot of bad rum. I have a best friend in Thailand. I was like, hey Dave, I bought 2 casks of Thai rum. And he said, why? It's terrible. And I started retasting and like, wait, no, it's not terrible. For the domestic market, they take this wonderful distillate and then they just, they add the sugar, they add the color, they do all kinds of stuff to it. They water it down. But if you taste the original spirit unadulterated with what you're tasting now, you're gonna get something that's really, really wonderful.
Is there residual sugar in there?
This one I believe has. Yeah, this one has no residual. I mean, you will get you'll get trace amounts of sugar from the distillate. Sometimes you're extracting that actually from the barrel, the natural sugars that are in the barrel. But yeah, it does come across as nicely sweet, but it's not artificially sweet. Okay, so the Kinnaree clocks in at 61.6%, the Kinnara at 61.8%. So they're quite high in proof, but I don't think they come across as super alcoholic.
Do you add water to rum?
Yes, yeah, you can add water to rum just the same way you add water to whiskey. So we actually ended up blending the two of them. So this one's called Menorah. So it's a half the Kinnaree, the female cask, it's half Kinnara, the male cask. Yeah, so it looks like this. The reason we call it menorah is that in Thailand, there is, well, Thailand actually has quite a great tradition of being very tolerant of gender fluidity. And they have a play called Udana Kumara Savadanya. You all know it, right? It's a story of a beautiful Kinnaree character who was half female, half bird. They captured her, they brought her to the prince fell in love with her. But the prince had to go off to war, and the king's advisors told the king, like, you should sacrifice her to protect your son. And so they were going to kill her. She managed to escape. Prince came back, super pissed, found her, brought her back to court, and the king decided, oh, you really do love her, and that's the play. But when the play is actually being produced, there's actually quite a long tradition of the female character being portrayed by a male actor. For those of you who are, into historical Shakespeare, often those characters were played by men as well. It's done quite commonly in Thailand, and so we thought we should name this cask after that, because this is kind of not only is it a rum blend of two single casks, it's kind of a gender blend. This is our gender blend rum. So our youngest child came out as trans 2 years ago, and this is also kind of our way of acknowledging that. So this is kind of our most personal release as a bottle, and 5% of this bottle goes to Thailand's Love Foundation that works for LGBTQ equality and healthcare.
I'm sorry, John, how did the menorah taste different from the Kinnaree? Because we don't have that menorah to
And
taste.
nobody has.
Yeah, that's not in the tasting. To be honest, there's two reasons. One, because the menorah is technically a blend, we're not sure that it can be sold by first fill. The other reason is that I messed up the label and I printed it with the wrong ABV. So when I went to go pick it up, the bottling facility was like, you can't release this. You got the ABV wrong. You got to reprint all the labels. So we're supposed to pick it up on Friday.
Okay.
So the way it's different is that it's the Kinnaree, so the softer, more lush female cask, mixed with the Kinnaree, which is the oakier male cask.
Okay. So we should drink all these in Thailand when we go, right?
Yeah, if you can get to Thailand, they've got some really great rums happening there, and it's not a very well-known country.
You said they're domestics. Garbage though, right?
Yeah, you gotta work. Yeah, there are smaller distilleries that are cropping up in Thailand. Shawang Bay is one of them. They do fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, go to the story.
Go retail.
Don't order it at the open air kickboxing bar, go to
It's so hot. It's
Not too bad.
Thailand, like year round, it's hot.
Are they awesome?
All right, let's get to Venezuela.
All right, Venezuela, guys.
So this is, we call this Whistler. So Whistler is a character from Venezuela, really charming. The way the story goes is if you drink a little bit of rum, that keeps the Whistler away. If you drink too much rum, the Whistler comes after you. And he kills you, he carves you up, he throws your bones into the bag that he carries on his back. So what you find when you go into these folk legends, they're all really gross. They're all really bloody. So that's the Whistler. It clocks in at 62.1%. It is a column still rum. I cannot name I'm legally barred from naming the distillery. But if you know anything about Venezuelan distillers, you can probably figure out which one it is. Their typical product does have some residual, some added sugar to it. This one does not. So I think in terms of all our rums, if I could just pick one rum that covered the most bases, that was the most well balanced, this is the one. It's got all of it. It's got that caramel flavoring, it's got a little bit of oak in there, it's got fruit, it's just a beautiful, beautiful expression. Yeah, some people get I get a lot of mocha off of it, a little bit of that coffee. Yeah. Sea salt, caramel, all that good stuff. At the very end, you may get a little bit of that acidic citrus peel to it. Yeah, I fell in love with this one. I just love this bottle. Okay, you may notice that we got two different labels here. Like we said, we commissioned artwork from different artists. We couldn't decide because we really liked the regular label style, which is more done inside kind of a woodcut illustration. But then you also have what we call the heavy metal label, which is the more wild, almost fantasy type artwork. So some of our bottles are available in two different label styles.
Collect them all.
Yeah. One thing that the reaction to the labels has been very interesting. Some people hate them. Some people are like, we will not put that on our shelves because no one's going to take it seriously if you have labels that are that colorful and that bold and that crazy. On the other hand, some people are like, I know a Raising Glass's rum bottle a mile away. The second I see the shape, the 375, the crazy labels, and just as a businessman, I've learned that if you are the small player in a big industry, you got to go for it. You got to swing for the fences, otherwise you're just going to get swallowed up. Most rum bottle packaging is very traditional, very classic. One of our idols is Eric Key from Holmes Key, and he's on record saying, I wanted it to look like classic rum bottle. I wanted it to be very consistent look. And so when we started our bottling and trying to figure out what are we going to look like, it's like, well, we can't be Foursquare. We can't be Holmes Key. We got to be something different. So we just changed everything.
Purple's a nice spot.
The purple, yeah, that's well, we got a little purple story coming up. Okay, let's move on to Guardians. So we're moving to we're moving to Trinidad. Okay, so this is 8 year. This is 67.9%. So 67.9%. So it's over 2/3 alcohol. When we tasted it, I thought that was a misprint because it's hot, but it's not like 67.9% hot. Again, no additives, no sugar added to it. We called it Guardians because in Trinidad, they're a legendary couple, Papa Bois and Mama Glow. So Papa Bois, if you are running through the fields and you're killing too many forest animals, he beats you to death with his massive fist. If you do too much fishing and you kill too much sea life, Mama Glow, who has, let me show you another picture of her.
Beautiful.
Yeah, she's really hot from here up, but down there, she's all snake. She will grab you, drag you down to the bottom of the ocean and drown you. So, again, it's kind of violent.
You're gonna get to sleep tonight because.
Yeah. You were expecting a horror movie, like tasting, not a horror movie.
It's very hard.
So in terms of Snobberfield, this was kind of the least sexy of the bottles that we originally released. So we were shocked to find out that last year this was named one of the top 14 rums of the year. So Rumcast is the #1 rum podcast out there, and every year they pick their favorite bottles. And one day we got all of our friends started texting us, going like, congratulations for what? Like, you've been named one of the top 14 rums of the year. Like, really? Which bottle? They said it was a Guardian. Like, that's just crazy. So we were really, really happy to hear that. This is kind of our underdog bottle, but now it's one of our most famous bottles.
So the flavor of this, it's quite different than the first two that we've had.
Yes, yeah.
Why? What is that?
So first of all, it's alcohol still. I mean, it's more cane.
Yeah.
More cane, more, you get more of the original cane characteristic out of it. Some people find it to be, the most famous rum from Trinidad is called Kinnaree. Kinnaree is a dead distillery. Their bottles are, you have to kill people to get a bottle of Kinnaree these days. If you pay attention to the finish of this Trinidad, where you get kind of a tobacco leather finish on the very end, that's very indicative of Kinnaree. That's actually why we bought this. So we kind of call this our baby Kinnaree. So, yeah, in terms of, why it became known, why it was picked one of the top 4 teams, that may be part of it.
Question about the law online. Would this be considered?
Excuse me?
Would this be considered a country rum?
No, this would not be considered a very country rum.
How much councils is it?
Trinidad was 8 years.
8 years.
All 8 years?
I think it's 6 in Trinidad. I think it was 6 in Trinidad and 2 in the UK.
UK is in the ocean.
Different than.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to a different part of the country altogether. So we just released this bottle.
Hold on, guys, we gotta see over here.
Yeah, so we just released this bottle about 3 weeks ago. It is selling out very, very quickly. We have one store that's been very supportive. They're on their 3rd order already. They sold out their first one almost immediately. They asked for more, and I said, "Can you wait a week? Because then I can bring some other stuff that's coming in." They said, "No, we need it tomorrow." So we got in a truck, drove it down there, and that we've heard has also been selling out as well. So this is the Yowie from Australia, from a distillery called Beenleigh. Beenleigh is getting really, really hot these days. A lot of people don't know that Australia actually has a fantastic distilling tradition. They've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've got, there we are with delicious, with the bannies.
Yes, put out a Beenleigh a couple of years ago.
Excuse me?
Single cast put out a Beenleigh.
Single Pass Nation.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, and Blackadder did it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of.
Holmes Cave put out a Beenleigh last year, and second we tasted that, I was like, we've got to get this, because there's no other rum that tastes like Beenleigh. So one of the reasons that Yowie is selling, there are 2 reasons I think that Yowie is selling really well. Number one is its proof. When we bought it, they said it was 66.6%. We're like, that's great, we can use that, 666. And then when it came over, they measured it again and they said it's 66.9%. I'm like, 69, we can use that. So we'll call it the Gronkowski. We'll call it the Gronkowski rum. And then when it actually started getting bottled, we did the final measurement, it came at 68.1%. So the proof is quite high.
And when we bought it, it was 68.3.
68.3.
Yeah.
That's 100% alcohol.
The New Hampshire guys are gonna be calling you again.
Sorry.
Well, you're too loud.
Well,
he should- oh, no, he-
The bottle says 68.3, which is higher than.
It keeps going.
It's exponential. It's like a bottle.
It's like,
To be honest, we probably should have watered this one down.
Okay.
So I would add water to it. But just the appeal of doing, completely cast strength Beenleigh. Because if you look at all of the original bottlings of Beenleigh, they're all much lower in proof. So we just couldn't resist the opportunity to bottle at cast strength.
I can't get over this. I'm sorry, I'm like absolutely what I tasting.
That's good, good. Yeah, it's there's no other bottle like this, like Beenleigh.
Something different. I'm not saying some people like feel.
Yes.
And. Yeah, just, yeah.
Yeah.
The other reason that we think this bottle is selling a lot is because it's 16 years. So when we started advertising, I tell people we got a 16-year Beenleigh.
Unlike most.
Steve McGarry, who was head manager at Beenleigh at the time, he's also a friend of Holly's as well. He said, I think that might be the oldest one that I've seen out there. And so he sent a list of all the independently bought Beenleigh. And I went right down the list of like, none of them are 16 years. So this might be the oldest Beenleigh that normal human beings can get. If you're not like deep into the industry. So,
It's entirely in Australia.
no. No, it is not.
It says it's-
Where's-
It is in Queensland, Australia. Yeah, so we called it Yowie. Yowie is their version of Bigfoot because he's kind of big and scary, and we think this is kind of a big and scary rum. So characteristics.
What's the price on them, yeah? Is it in square?
Yep, you can just finish raising the glass. and they'll drink.
Yeah, it should be about $60. And again, it's $3.75.
I'm getting.
We got it through our brokers and.
But it. This is.
Yeah.
One I-
Yeah.
They don't fly that.
No, it comes out all of it.
Unless
Unless it's from the US.
Just a little bit.
I mean.
It came to UK.
You're right.
Yeah. It aged like 12 or 13 years in Australia and then 2 or 3 years in
Wow.
UK. But yeah, they all go
About 3 months on the boat.
about.
So not only, so it was funny, we had when Eric K from Homeskey was coming through town, and it was like, hey, you want to taste our Beenleigh? Because your Beenleigh was the one that inspired us to get our Beenleigh. And he tasted it, he goes like, what year is this? And I said like, we did the math, like it's 2007. He's like, I think I know why this one's so special. Because that was from the era when they were using the Palm Bay yeast. So of course I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So I go home and do this thing. So it turns out that Beenleigh used an S. Palm Bay yeast until 2010. The S. Palm Bay yeast was a yeast that's indigenous to Australia. It was very well known for producing very beautiful esters and very beautiful flavored compounds. And then they stopped doing it in 2010. And so I was like, well, why did they stop doing it in 2010? S. Palm Bay yeast is very poor at generating large amounts of alcohol. So it's extremely inefficient and it's very expensive to make it that way.
Great stuff. Inefficient.
Right, right. So, yeah, so we're really, really happy that we were able to get one from that era when they were using that indigenous yeast. So flavor wise, people often get eucalyptus or kind of a minty flavor to it. Black licorice. Yeah, a little bit of an anise note to it, kind of that vegetal quality. There's also, yeah, there is a little bit of funk in it, which gives it a little bit of weight. The thing that always reminds me of this is, remember Lifesavers? And they had a wintergreen Lifesaver. If that's what I get so strongly. The other thing that's really cool about Beenleigh is that for bourbon drinkers who were really, who were really expect that kind of dry finish. We don't want that kind of syrupy, sweet molasses finish. This is the one for you.
Yeah.
Because it just finishes so much like a really high end bourbon. Yeah, okay, so we are on our last tasting. Hopefully you're still with us. So this is what we call the Moongazer. So it's a 9-year from Guyana. This is a very special bottling from Guyana. There's a lot of releases from it. Well, I should talk about the name. So Moongazer, here's another great story. So
You better cover your ears.
Moongazer is a creature that.
Hold up, let's listen in on this.
Moongazer is a very tall creature, kind of looks like an alien, and he walks the beach along Guyana at night, and he stares at the moon. And little children, if they are try to run between his legs, he crushes under the ground. So we think the reason they made up this myth is to keep children from running out of the house at night and drowning in the ocean. Because don't do that, the Moongazer is going to kill you first.
Yeah, so it's only if you run through his legs.
Yeah, you can just run around them. It's totally fine.
Big legs.
Right, and you're good.
So the reason this one is so special is that it's made in the Versailles still. It's spelled Versailles, but the locals say Versailles. That's why we say Versailles.
Kind of like the pronunciation too.
Yes, exactly. The Versailles still is one of, I believe, 2 rum stills that are made of wood. So we'll get into that later, but it's very unusual to have a still made of wood. It seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah.
Probably the reason there are only 2 left.
Fire hat. Well, you see why they're all gone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so 5% of the profits on this go to an educational fund in Guyana called the Blossoms of Guyana. But let's talk about this wooden still. So this is the Versailles still. It is over 250 years old.
Wow.
And it looks like hell. Like the idea that we're actually drinking something that was made out of something that's ugly, I think is kind of special. Wooden pot still, how did it last 250 years old? Well, to be honest, every time part of it goes bad, they slap in a replacement. That's fine. So it's kind of that chip of PCF thing. But the reason that wooden stills are unique to Guyana is that there's a type of tree that produces what they call heartwood. So it's a very dense wood that is very resistant to fire. Now, of course, they're not just like throwing a flame right on the wood. Actually, it's going through some sort of a water process to heat it more safely. But the thing about using wood in a still is that wood traps in heat much better than metal does. Because if you're thinking, if you take some boiling water, you put it in something, aluminum can versus something that's wood, you touch it, the metal one's going to be way hotter. So the wood is actually keeping the heat in there, which makes for a very intense distillation process and a very intense beer. Okay, so here's the heavy metal version of the Moongazer.
Yeah, that's the one you didn't want to see.
So the one thing
Oh, yeah, shit.
is that we said we were going to do for every rum. We're going to release it at cast strength. We're going to make sure it had as much tropical aging as possible, and we're also going to have no additives until we hit this bottle, because when we tasted it at cast strength, Eric Key, again from Holmes Key, he tasted this like, you should really water this down. I'm like, no, we're cast strength people. We never water it down. And he basically said, so stop being a baby. Water it down, taste it side by side. Tell me which one's better. And he was right. We brought this down to a very puny 57.5%. It just brings out much more of the flavor. That's the only single cask one that we brought down. The blend we bring down, right? Tropical aging. This has no tropical aging. All 9 years were done in the UK, which sounds like it should be bad, but I think it's kind of cool. I think that kind of softened it up a little bit to the point where you could get a very intense spirit, but one that wasn't like very heavily wood influenced. So kind of cool. We like that. So we broke that rule. And the final thing is we're never adding sugar. We're never putting any additives to it. So we found out that there's a very rare mark in rum. So mark is a term for their basic recipes for how they make their rums. We believe this is the REV mark. And what they did is, if you look at the color of it, one of the first things everyone was like, oh my God, it's such a gorgeous color. And we have to tell people, yeah, there's a reason for that. So with the REV mark, they would make their own caramel coloring. So they would use Demerara sugar from, which is the sugar from Guyana, Demerara River, and they would make their own coloring out of it. So it's basically a caramel coloring, and they would actually throw it in the barrel, and they would age it in the barrel, so that the colors actually becomes part of the not only the integral color of it, but also the integral character of the spirit. So not only is it 9 years of aging of the rum, it's also 9 years aging of this special spirit, their own homemade caramel coloring. Last I heard, they've stopped doing this, but I think it makes for a very, very interesting rum. Out of the original series, this was my favorite. Some people love it, some people really love it, some people really hate it. I get a lot of raisins, prunes. It's right.
I can catch the Demerara on the nose.
Yeah, you can literally smell the sugar. But it's sugar. Yeah.
More like you want to call the nightmares. You want to put the nightmares down.
Okay, so that's the end of the tastings that we have for you tonight. We do have a number of bonus tastings, so I'll rip through really quickly.
Bonus tasting.
You can buy this burning cane, so this is Four Square, probably the hottest rum distillery in the world. It's a 15-year cask strength. If you like Four Square, definitely check out this one. We are in our warehouse, we're completely sold out of this. So the bottles we have here, one bottle left.
No.
And one bottle.
Yeah, let's get grab it.
No, we also brought it.
Yeah, pour with us.
This is the one bottle that has left. We also like to take a little bit of each cask and make a blend out of it. So we have what's called rum passport. So out of the 6 countries that we've gotten bottles from, we put it all together and we made a blend out of it. Again, we're not selling the blends here.
It's the Navy style. It's the Navy, man.
It's kind of like Navy style to the nth degree because it's got 6 countries.
Space
in it.
Navy.
So, but if you're interested in tasting, if you're interested in traveling the world in one glass, you can travel 6 nations in one glass. We've got this available as a bonus taste. Okay, so this is where we go around and we ask people which ones were their favorite. Okay. Well, can we start with you?
Overall,
Okay,
Yeah,
so
overall, out of what you tasted.
my favorite was Opulence.
Opulence. Okay, very good.
I like the Linkwood, but I don't know that it's, you compare the Scotch to the rum. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
One of each. Maybe one pick Scotch, pick a rum.
yeah, if you want to pick their favorites out of the Scotch and the rums, I'm interested in hearing that as well. Okay, and you, sir?
I like the Innocence with a little bit of water in it, and then the rums. I finally discovered something that gives me heartburn, which is rum. Bourbon doesn't do that? No,
Interesting.
apparently rum does. I like the Kinnaree the most, I think so far.
Kinnaree.
I haven't tried this with a little bit of water yet, but. see, I like this.
Moongazer.
Yep.
Okay.
The Linkwood's up there. I would say the Kinnaree's up there,
Kinnaree.
and then I just polish off the Whistler. And I'm gonna say Whistler.
Wrestling, good.
Yeah.
We have a Whistler online too.
Oh, available like right now online.
No.
Oh,
The whiskey follow the bus.
yeah, that's the pre-order.
Whistler and Kinnaree.
How about you?
I'm Whistler as well.
Wrestling.
Scotch's Linkwood is the better one, but Whistler.
Yeah, all right, Linkwood and Whistler.
We have a Yowie online.
Well,
Yeah,
I'd say,
okay.
the single grade, I would say for me it was the Innocence, for. What's that? I love the Linkwood single malt, so I mean, it's only one single malt, but I do not definitely. And I would say the rum is, the Moongazer.
Okay,
It's a close on in this.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, you sir, the yellow.
We look yellow now.
Top. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Linkwood? Guardian. Guardian. You?
Opulence for whiskey and Whistler for good people.
Opulence and West. Good, very good.
I'd say Opulence.
Opulence, okay.
Yeah, Opulence and actually the Kinnaree.
Opulence and Kinnaree. Okay, good, good.
Now,
No. Always.
I like the Linkwood and the Yowie.
Linkwood and Yowie, okay. That's not Linkwood and Yowie.
I love the Innocence, and my favorite of the rums is the Guardian.
Another guy.
My least favorite would be Yowie.
Really?
yeah, I have to agree, that was my least favorite.
Yeah, yeah, it's not for everybody.
I wanted that to be.
Most favorite is the Moongazer.
Another non-Yowie.
I would say Linkwood and Guardian.
Linkwood and Guardian. Wow, Guardian's really cleaning up today.
I would say Linkwood and Guardians.
Another Linkwood.
You know, I certainly a Linkwood on the Scotch, and I maybe like a Whistler and the Yowie. I think once I opened up with the Yowie with water, I think that's the winner.
Okay, so Yowie with water
And
and the.
Yeah, I do Opulence for Scotch and Yowie with water as well.
Opulence and Yowie. That's an unusual combination. Okay, so some things we got coming up soon. We have the privateers, Queen Share the Rage, Rift that we mentioned before. We have Linkwood Volume 2 in Oloroso Quarter Cask, Linkwood Volume 3, Madeira Cask. Those are available for tasting. Our next line of rums, an Ecuador 5-year. We're bringing in a Guyana 16-year.
What story?
The mark is ELWR, so there's only really one distillery in Guyana now.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it's not.
it's Diamonds.
Okay, so it's
Diamond.
not.
But they've collected distills from all the historical distilleries. What's that?
It's not Ulubi.
No,
How we pronounce it?
no, I don't know.
The unpronounced.
Yeah.
I was 16 years, it's probably.
Yeah, Outfoot is, that still is in, Diamond Distillery now.
But, yeah, it's nothing but respect, right?
Okay, all right, so we have a reunion, from the Island Reunion, Savannah Distillery, and we also have a sequel to Yowie coming. We're buying another,
Electric.
Australia.
Hopefully, that was good.
We're bringing in some single casks from Westland, so American single malt. We're also a distributor for Down Island from Florida. Down Island rum from Florida. Also coming soon, we are the Massachusetts distributors from Rolling Fork. And we have a very special bottle. We're calling it Purple Cane. So it is.
It's the purple story. Here we
It
go.
is a Rolling Fork rum from Foursquare that's aged in Pinot de Chiron. So basically that Pinot Chiron is kind of a spin-off of cognac mixed in, cognac eau de vie, mixed in with some fresh juice as well. So we have, we do have that available for tasting as well. So available tastings, we got the rum passport, we have the Burning Cane Foursquare, we have our Purple Cane, we have our two Linkwoods, and the Westland single cask. And if you're really into esters, we have the Hamden DOK.
Okay.
One of the highest ester rums ever made. The legend is Hamden never actually intended people to drink it. It was to be used for industrial purposes and also for blending in other blended rums. But people got a hold of it. And so we have a rare bottling of it here that Holly was able to score for us. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
We're gonna stop the recording, but we can hang out here another 15 minutes, but then we need everybody out of the building. I'm just saying.
It's like you know this group. I'm not really kidding. I'm just that serious.
Thanks, everybody. Learned a lot.